I'm here to introduce for you our alumni guest speaker, Josh Barczak. Josh was a BS student here who then continued on for his master's degree. I actually first met him in 2002. He took the computer science computer graphics class in fall of 2002, which was the very first class I ever taught at UMBC. And then the very next semester he came to me, or I guess it was sort of later that semester, asking to do an independent study. And I said yes, and the results of that turned out extremely well. Turned into a paper in the UMBC review. And then the next year he came back as a master's student, took 3 more classes from me in computer graphics. Class projects from those classes turned into additional research projects that continued after the classes were over, and paper submissions to other places. And then he completed his master's thesis and went out into the world, as all of our students, all of you students eventually do. So I'm really thrilled to have him back here as our guest speaker to tell you a little bit about what he has been doing since those days, and how his time here has helped him to get to where he is now. So our guest from Firaxis Games, Joshua Barczak.
Thank you all. The industry I'm in is one that has a reputation for being very difficult to get into. A lot of people want to get into it, and it's not easy to do, but a lot of people want to. There's an impression that people want to get into this industry because it's a kind of enchanted cloister in which we can be paid millions of dollars to play games all day and drink free beer. And I'm happy to confirm for you that I have on occasion received free beer. I've also played games on the clock, which when they are not finished is not nearly as exciting as you might think. When you've looked into it and you've learned the reality of this industry, when you still want to get into it, you end up wanting to get into it, not so much because it's fun, it is fun, but because it's challenging. And I'd like to talk a bit about how my undergrad experience here prepared me for that. Before I do that, I'd like to give a quick introduction to who I work for and what I do there, in case you're not familiar with it. Firaxis is a small company, about 120 people, located right up the road from here in Hunt Valley. It's been around for a while, and what distinguishes it is that it's got a very good reputation for strategy games. The games that Firaxis makes are thinking games. The gameplay is focused on resource management and economics and strategy and planning. And in this particular pond, we're a very large and well-respected fish. Our games are a lot of fun. The people who play them find them so addictive that it actually inspired our marketing folks to invent a fictional support group. I'm a relative newcomer there. I've only been there for around 3 years. I worked on one ship title, which was Sid Meier's Civilization V, which is the 5th game in a series, and has the distinction of being the only game I know of to have a state holiday declared on its release date, which we're all very proud of. The game has been a huge commercial and critical success. I'm happy to have worked on it. I don't want to take too much credit for it. I hope that you will not make the mistake of referring to me as the guy who made Civ 5. The fact is, it was a very large effort. I'm one tiny cog in a very grand machine. You will be interested to know that UMBC is actually very well represented there. In particular, of 7 people that I counted who do exactly my job, 4 of them are UMBC alumni like I am. My job, when I have a lot of trouble describing exactly what it is to people who don't know exactly what it is. When people first hear from my work, when they hear where I work, they assume that I design games, and it's not exactly true. I don't really design the games per se. So I explain it a little bit more, and people hear that I make pictures on the computer, and they conclude I'm some sort of graphic designer, which also isn't exactly right. I don't really design per se. I'm actually a software engineer. And that basically entails writing a long, tedious sequence of instructions to give the computer to cause it to do something useful. And my specialty is in graphics, which is synthesizing the pictures that you see on the screen while you're playing the game. What that entails, very briefly, is starting with some 3D objects which an artist has made, has modeled, and which a game designer has put somewhere in the world. I figure out what you can see, and I cause you to see it. I calculate all of the individual colors that you see when that thing is projected onto your screen. And this needs to be done very, very fast. For a game, you need 30 to 60 screen updates per second, and so there's a lot of challenges involved there. The job is mainly engineering. It's got a bit of applied physics and math, and a little bit of creative trickery, because to make this run at a decent rate, you have to cheat a lot. So it's a bit of a stretch to think of me as a scientist, but research skills actually do affect my job in a couple of ways. I want to talk about two. The first way is a very practical one, which is that fixing any software problem of sufficient complexity has to involve the scientific method. Software involves lots and lots of changes being made by lots and lots of people all at once, and when this happens, things tend to break, and you will often have to go in and fix them. And when you're charged with fixing something, the first question you ask should not be, how do I fix this? If you start with, how do I fix this, you end up fixing it as soon as you can and hiding the real problem. Your bug stays around, lays eggs, and you end up with an infestation. The first question that you want to ask is a scientific one. It's, why is this broken? Which in turn leads to some other questions. What conditions are present here? What's going on? Observation. What other conditions have to be present? Deduction. What could cause all of these things to be taking place? Hypothesis. And how would I know that that was happening? Testable prediction. And you keep asking these questions, and you repeat it until you know exactly what's going on, at which point you can finally fix it. The second way in which I use research skills is one that's a little more general. The point I want to make is that any problem of sufficient scope does not have a clear, obvious, ready-made solution. In real life, there are not going to be books and lecture notes to consult to tell you exactly how to solve whatever problem you need to solve. The right answer is going to depend on your particular circumstances, and any resources that you do have are going to have some limitations. Written resources will leave things out. I've found that CS journals in particular, they will give you enough information to get the high-level idea, and they leave it up to you to fill in all of the little details and gaps that you're supposed to be able to provide by yourself. Papers may also be fluffed up. You may have something that looks good, but that doesn't turn out to work quite as well as it does when it's applied to a new situation. And finally, the written resources may be wrong. There may be a corner case that you're going to run into that the original authors didn't, and that you're stuck fixing. You have to be able to take whatever others have done and do a critical analysis of it and derive a brand new solution from what you've looked at. And if prior art fails you, you're going to be doing that from scratch. What that means ultimately that having a fundamental understanding of your subject, whatever it is more important than collecting a large body of rote facts. This is especially true now that we have Google. Something that, for me, distinguished my undergrad experience from all of my previous academic experience is that it's the first time when neither you nor your professor knows the answer. Your professor doesn't know exactly what the answer is to the problem that they've given you. That's why they've given it to you. Your job is not just to learn the answer, your job is to discover the answer. And as you go about doing that, you're going to be learning the general art of discovering answers and of solving your own problems. And I want to go through 3 specific things that I learned that helped me prepare for that. The first lesson that I learned is how to think outside of the proverbial box. To explain what I mean by that, I need to give a little bit of technical background. The independent study that I did was focused on trying to take a graphics accelerator, a piece of hardware that you find in a computer. It's designed to do graphics, and we were trying to take it and do general purpose calculations on it, which is basically something that it was never built to do. It was not intended to do this, but we wanted to see if it could be used in a very different way. This has actually turned into an important application area for these things. It's very important in the HPC space now, and it has its own acronym, GPGPU, and it has stable and mature tool sets. In 2003, this was not the case. In 2003, the methods I had to work with, by today's standards, can only be described as clever, convoluted hacks. And the hacks had not all been discovered yet. There was follow-on work afterwards, which discovered some real whoppers. This was exploratory work that was being done that people were doing to try and figure out what the limitations of these machines were, and they were using the only tools they had available. And my point of all that is that working in an unusual way, trying to do something in a way that is different, taught me how to generalize things. I learned how to fit what I had available into the problem that I had to solve, even when there was no clear and obvious connection between the two. The ability to do that, I find, leads you to a lot of new ideas. It causes new ideas to creep into your head at an accelerated rate, and some of those ideas actually turn out to be good. And as you go along, you learn how to distinguish the good ones from the bad ones. The second lesson that I learned was how to get at the details without having them taught to me. I had to learn how to program this graphics board, and I had to do it from scratch, and this wasn't even the point of the project. This was just something that I needed to do to accomplish my actual goal, which I think was excellent practice for my job. A real practical benefit that I got was that I was using this hardware at a time when it was brand new, at a time when people hadn't really had much exposure to it, and when there wasn't a whole lot of familiarity with it. And I think that this in part led me to my first job after college, which was at the vendor who made the hardware that I was trying to use. I landed in the research group where we were trying to do pretty much the same thing, find new ways to use this hardware so that we could use them to sell more of it. Gaming, it turns out, was and is the dominant market for these things, and so in that job I learned a lot about how game graphics is done, which when I decided to move, to switch careers, made me a very good candidate. The third lesson I learned, what I think is the most valuable of them, and which will probably sound the most cliche, is that I learned that I really love this stuff. I found a subject that I like. When I was a kid, like many kids, I liked to draw pictures, and I was terrible at drawing pictures. And this was okay for me. I had a lot of other things I was good at. It didn't really bother me. But I get to my graphics class, I have this homework assignment that is spitting out these pictures. And the lines are all straight, and the perspective is right, and the lighting is correct, and the shading is vivid and smooth. And it occurs to me that I have the power to make a beautiful image of whatever I want using only math and electricity. And something strange happened. I discovered that I was now doing my homework for fun. This changed my priorities a little bit. I stopped thinking about how I could graduate and get a game industry job and started thinking about how can I do more of this? Because this is fun, this intrigues me, and I want to keep doing it. And ironically, unusually I think for this industry, I wound up with the game industry job by ignoring the game industry for a while to do what I was really interested in. So I'd like to close with two little bits of advice and motivation. One thing I'd like to say to the faculty, and other to the students. For the faculty, I'd like to say that if you have a student who's turns out like me, who likes and takes an interest in your subject, a small amount of investment, encouragement, and gentle prodding can have an enormous impact on that person's life. This was definitely true to me. When I was deciding to go to grad school, I was kind of applying at the last minute. Wasn't sure that I'd be accepted, wasn't sure that I was really cut out for it. And Doctors Alano and Desjardins were both both knew this and both came to me independently of each other and gave me a lot of important encouragement. They knew better, and they made sure that I knew better, and they made sure that I went ahead and did it. And I think without that involvement, I would not have accomplished as much of what I had. My life would look very different. To the students, I would say that what you have here is a very unique and valuable opportunity. You've all chosen a subject that is presumably your favorite one, and you've all been given a chance to practice that subject in a controlled environment. If at the end you find that you're glad it's over, I would suggest to you that you should change subjects, even if that means changing your plans. If on the other hand you're still excited and you really love it and you're disappointed that it's ended, I would say don't let it end. Find a way to make a career out of this thing in whatever way is appropriate to that thing, be it a job, be it grad school, be it auditioning for performance. Changing your plans like this may involve a bit of personal risk. Supporting yourself is obviously an important priority. If you are aiming at a really competitive field like mine is, it is prudent to have a secondary goal in mind. But you want to make sure that this secondary goal is only a secondary goal and that you keep that in mind as you're doing it. I want to leave you with this idea. You are going to be working at your day job for the vast majority of your waking life. And it is best for everyone involved if that job is exactly the thing you want to be doing. If your work is not work to you, you will be happy in your work, you will be better in your work. And that's it. I wish you the best of luck. Thank you.